What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about why nobody cycles in London. Now, don't get me wrong, us Americans, we really don't enjoy walking places, but it's pretty common to see people like cycling, especially in cities and stuff. So I'm genuinely confused, like why no one would cycle in London. I have never heard of this before. I actually would have thought that cycling around London would be very, very popular. One of the most popular ways to like transport yourself around the city, you know? So I'm really curious to get to the bottom of this. This was just like super random to me, and I'm very interested. Why no cycling in London? Why don't people do it? So let's take a look.
Why isn't cycling normal in London? Is it to do with the way the streets were built? Or is it something embedded in our culture?
Oh.
Or is it a complicated and nuanced mixture of the two, combined with several other surprisingly interesting factors that will take about 10 minutes to discuss?
Oh wow. It's not in the London culture or the British culture. I'm a little confused. Don't people cycle like in Britain? You know, isn't that pretty normal? I thought Britain was all about like the public transportation or the walking and the cycling, and it's us Americans who are kind of lazy and taking our cars everywhere, even like down the street. So, why on earth is this?
Cycling infrastructure in London has been around longer than you might think. As far back as the 1930s, when hardly anyone drove, the wise town planners decreed that cars and bikes don't mix.
Huh?
New suburbs in Morden, Perivale and Romford were furnished with shiny, wide, segregated cycle tracks.
Wait, what? Wait a minute. We're looking at the history of cycling in London. So there was cycling. Cycling was very popular, especially in the good old days, and they have like dedicated bike paths and everything. So what happened?
The first of its kind was opened by Transport Minister Leslie Hore-Belisha in 1934. But they weren't really used much. Cycling groups at the time hated these so-called cycle tracks.
Huh?
They were worried that they'd be forced to use them and then banned from regular roads. Indeed, that's exactly what Leslie Hore-Belisha wanted, saying that cyclists were the most dangerous people on the road today.
Oh my gosh. I had no idea there was such a controversial history of cycling in London. Like the cyclists, like they got dedicated bike paths, but they didn't like them, and then the city didn't like the cyclists, and it's a whole thing. I had no idea that this was so interesting, actually.
So a cycling revolution never came, but a new revolution was just around the corner.
Introducing the new car. Think you can't afford a car? Thanks to technology, the new car is more affordable than ever.
Okay.
You can afford the new car. With a new car, you can drive around in your new car. Do you like your new car?
I love my new car.
Oh, wow. Oh my God. This is the creepiest laugh I've ever heard. I was just about to say, this advertisement, this commercial would really get me buying a new car. But not with this laugh. What is this? What are you?
As cars became
Why is it
more
going so
affordable,
long?
the roads became more full of them. And so, the 1960s planners, in their finite wisdom, altered London's existing streets to make more room for cars. And cyclists were completely forgotten about. Historic.
Interesting. Like, there's laws and stuff about cycling in the United States. Sometimes there's dedicated cycling, like lanes on the road or special pathways, and it's a whole thing. So it seems what happened here in London is that they cared about cycling to begin with, but then once cars came along, they started just building London for cars, with cars in mind. But that still doesn't really answer the question of why no cycling to this day. Like, is there just no accommodations for cycling? Is it too dangerous? Like, I'm still a little confused.
Hyde Park Corner was turned into a massive scary roundabout where every lane is the wrong lane. So was Archway, Elephant and Castle, Waterloo, and Hammersmith.
Oh, wow.
The Westway was built, blech, and nearly all the 1930 suburban cycle tracks disappeared, some becoming lanes for cars, others becoming parking spaces. Unsurprisingly, over the next few decades, the number of cyclists in London plummeted.
Wow, okay, wow. That's too bad. So, they really changed the entire infrastructure of London to just focus on cars, and they actually took away bike lanes and bike paths that used to exist and got rid of them. That would make sense why the number of cyclers in general would go down. But even still, when I think of places like New York City or something, there's lots of people riding their bikes just on the sidewalk and stuff, like, or even in the road or the side of the road, and the cars just have to look out for them. Really. Can it not be like that? Or I guess it's not.
Ow! This terrifying video from about 1984 and a half, which, believe it or not, is trying to promote cycling in London, shows just how treacherous and horrible life on two wheels had become.
Okay, never mind. You have to be a little out of your mind to want to do this. That looks terrifying.
It was cars won, cyclists dead.
Oh my god.
Meanwhile, in Europe, cities like Amsterdam, which in the 70s had similarly lethal roads to London, not to mention a few dead children, decided to do something brave. Over the next 3 decades, the historic streets were totally transformed to prioritize pedestrians and pedalers.
Oh, wow.
Cars were banned from some streets, and new, segregated, wide, uninterrupted, smooth cycle paths were built in the lanes where people used to drive.
Wow, so a lot of the other parts of Europe actually focus on cycling and facilitating cycling with dedicated roads for pedestrians and cycling. I guess that's a great point, because that was really in my mind. Like, as an American, when I think of just Europe, I think of like, oh, everyone's like walking places, people are healthier, people are cycling places. So I think that has to do with why I was a little shocked that like London, it's not so much the case for whatever reason. Or now I kind of understand the reason. London actively like went out of its way to not make it very cycling friendly, unfortunately.
Turning Amsterdam inside out wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But eventually, cycling became the normal, default way of getting around.
Wow.
And it was cars that had to learn to wait their turn.
Wait a minute, where where is he right now? Because people are cycling all over the place. Like, what?
Keep out of the way and go the long way round. Now, that doesn't mean that the Dutch are bike-mad cycling enthusiasts. That's a bit like saying that everyone in Britain is obsessed with vacuum cleaners just because everyone's got one. In Holland, the Netherlands, there's no such thing as a cyclist. These people are teachers, doctors, lawyers, students, systems analysts, chartered quantity surveyors, and porn stars.
Oh, what? Okay, let's keep going. He's literally like in the Netherlands right now, just like that? Okay. Wow. And everyone's bicycling. Like, holy cow, I've never seen so much bicycling, so much cycling. Here in the United States, we call it bicycling. And I think in Britain, you more say cycling, right? I'm trying to use the word cycling.
So, why didn't this happen in London? Actually, it's quite hard to say. Maybe it's because we Brits have always been overly attached to our cars. In the 80s, cars were a status symbol. Margaret Thatcher famously probably said,
"A man over 30 who finds himself on a bus can count himself a failure."
This meant that politicians and planners who wanted to make cycling better always did so with their hands tied behind their back. They couldn't do anything to get in the way of our lovely cars. Another possible...
Interesting. So, like, cycling really is promoted a lot in other parts of Europe, just not in London? Or is it just a London thing? Or is this like wider spread in other parts of the UK as well? That I'm curious. This is really focusing on London. I think this is a London thing, that there's not much like in the way of facilitating cycling.
Another possible reason is the way London was run for so many years. After Thatcher abolished the GLC in 1986, cycle infrastructure and the like was provided by London's 32 bickering boroughs. So there was no one to provide a citywide shift in culture. That would all change in the year 2000.
Really?
For the first time, London had an assembly and a directly elected mayor with the power and budget to think big.
Oh, wow, this is interesting about like London history, London politics and government. It's divided up into all the boroughs or sections that kind of run themselves, and they couldn't work together to come up with a cohesive cycling agenda until the 2000s, when there's like a mayor of London. Like maybe he'll get some proper cycling paths built, but probably not, because the topic and title of this whole video is that cycling is not normal or common in London. So I assume to this day this is still a problem.
Ken Livingstone and the newly formed Transport for London, or TfL, had to tackle London's chronic congestion and pesky pollution. And they saw that cycling could play a vital role.
Right.
Although late to the party, with the right investment, London had the potential to become a cycling mecca just like Amsterdam. After all, it's got the same climate, it's flat, mostly, the streets are wide enough, and most journeys in London are a perfectly bikeable less than 2 miles.
Huh. Yeah. It seems so reasonable for people to cycle around a city like London. It would free up traffic, it would free up public transportation, it's healthier, it's good for the environment. I'm really quite shocked that this is actually not a thing in London. I'm pretty surprised.
It was totally doable. They had to do it soon, and they had to do it now. Nearly more than 7 years later, Ken Livingstone stole an idea from Paris, the cycle hire scheme. Docking stations were to be planted all over central London, with bikes that were too heavy and conspicuous to want to steal. And
Yeah. I've heard of these things. Like, I think these exist some places in the United States even. Bicycles that are like on racks, and you pay to unlock them, and then you can cycle around town. It's very convenient.
anyone with a bank card and a pair of legs could hire them for a small fee.
Right.
It took until 2010 for the scheme to finally get going, by which time London had a new mayor whose idea it wasn't, giving the scheme the misleading but memorable and durable nickname Boris Bikes. They were an instant smash, popular with locals and wobbly tourists alike.
Oh, okay.
They helped promote the idea that urban cycling wasn't just for lycra-clad enthusiasts, but for everybody.
Wait, so this worked? This worked! Or did it? Or isn't it still dangerous, though? So they got a lot of people on bikes going around town. But it seems to me like this would be very, very dangerous in London. That's one of the biggest problems. There's no, like, bike lanes, and it's crazy traffic and super busy, and it's just dangerous.
With so many new wibbly-wobblies on the road, it was more important than ever that London had safe streets to cycle on.
Yeah.
And so, that very same year, along came the mayor's most boldest plan so far, the cycle superhighways. This was a new special type of bicycle motorway for commuters that was long distance, clearly labelled, and painted luminous bright blue to match the colour of Barclays, who was sponsoring the whole thing.
Oh, wow. This makes sense to me. Yeah, just like a bike lane. This is what's sort of common in a lot of parts of the United States, like not in this color, but just a lane on the side of the road. That's for bicycles. Yeah, so they should do this. They did this. So is there still a problem, or did this fix the problem, right?
12 cycle superhighways were planned, numbered like hours on a clock, radiating out from central London.
Okay.
The first to open in 2010 was CS7, which went over the underused Southwark Bridge, squiggled around Elephant and Castle, and followed the Northern Line all the way down to Collier's Wood.
Okay,
Next came
nice.
CS2, which went east from Aldgate through Whitechapel and up to the future Olympic Park at Stratford.
This is actually pretty cool. Like these bike superhighways, like that are very carefully designed to take you to all the different directions of London. I like this.
Were these superhighways any good? No.
Oh.
Although very well signposted in a lovely shade of blue, there was nothing to physically separate cyclists from passing cars, buses and lorries. Sometimes the blue paint would stop abruptly or merge with a bus lane or fill up with parked cars. Timid new cyclists, the very people this scheme was designed to make feel safe, didn't feel safe at all.
Oh, man. Okay, like the logistics got in the way. It didn't work in reality, not practically speaking. They built the bike superhighways, but cars still drive over them, cars park on them, people get in the way. I see. So they actually tried to do this, and it just didn't really work.
More worryingly, new-ish and confident-ish cyclists were lulled into a false sense of security. They'd start on an easy bit, and then, when the blue paint ran out, splat. Venera Minakhmatova, a 24-year-old Russian businesswoman, was killed by a lorry at the
Oh my god. Cyclists have died in London. Oh my god, that's horrible.
Notoriously inadequate Bow interchange. One of 5 cyclists to die on the capital streets in just 2 weeks.
Wow.
It led to protests calling for the mayor and TfL to stop killing cyclists. A closer look at the original superhighway designs reveals that they were dangerously ill thought through. According to this map, CS11 was supposed to go up the very narrow Kilburn High Road. And where exactly was that meant to go?
Oh geez, so, oh god, they didn't think this out very much. They, like, wanted to do good. It was a good idea. Well-intentioned idea, as many are. But terrible in, the real world. Man, and people died because, yeah, like they said, there's parts of the bike lane where it just, like, stops out of nowhere. It just ends. Like, what the heck?
So, TfL went back to the drawing board and took it more seriously this time. The next generation of cycle superhighways from 2013 onwards was a massive improvement. Physically separated from traffic with features like dedicated traffic lights and floating bus stops, these were proper cycle paths worthy of the Dutch.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. So they actually learned from their mistakes, a novel concept, and built proper, like, separated bike lanes. So what's the problem? Why? So did this actually fix it, or do people still not really want to cycle in London? Because this seems great.
Have these new superhighways been a success? Yes.
Ah.
Cycling on these routes has increased a whopping 60%.
Look at that.
At rush hour, 60% of all journeys are bikes. They even have cycling traffic jams. It demonstrates quite demonstrably that if you build it, they will come.
Wow, okay, maybe there's a happy ending to this. What the? Okay, great. Yeah, I've never seen so many cyclists. Okay.
Spurred on by the success of the cycle superhighways, the city was starting to send itself cycling silly. Look! Torrington Place is closed to cars westbound. Look! Bank Junction is buses and bikes only on weekdays. Look! Camden are filling their streets with armadillos. Armadillos! We're even starting to correct our mistakes from the 60s, turning former big scary roundabouts into much safer, albeit confusing, two-way inside-out question-mark-shaped junctions. In Archway, Elephant and Castle, Waterloo, not Hammersmith though, it's too late for Hammersmith. So everybody's happy.
Wow, okay. And I think that's pretty good right there. That was actually really, really fascinating, just for an entire topic about cycling around London. That was actually riveting to me. That was by Jay Foreman, and I gotta give that a like. That was very well done. Very funny as well. I enjoyed the comedy there. Interesting. So basically we learned cycling was great early on in London. Then it was totally scrapped. They totally disregarded cycling and cycling safety and made London just for cars. And then they started to build bike lanes, which were a fail and got people killed, actually. And then finally, they built proper bike lanes, cycling lanes that have been a reasonable success for London. So that's interesting. The topic and title of this was Why Nobody Cycles in London. But it really should be why people cycled in London, then didn't, then died trying, and then cycle now. So that would more accurately depict what we learned here today. So I actually quite enjoyed this. It was fascinating. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like, or leave a comment with your thoughts on cycling in London or anything we learned here today. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Britain and British culture and learning things about Britain for the first time, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.